Hi, I'm Lorelei, registered dietitian nutritionist. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be taking on a slightly more serious subject, vitamin D, and whether or not it has a role in the fight against the coronavirus or COVID-19. The vitamin D debates. Should I take it? Should I be supplementing? How can I get it in my diet? Will you elect to take vitamin D? Let's discuss. In today's kitchen counter controversy, we will also feature Joe, my significant other who I've been sheltering in place with for the past 7 months. I will be taking the point of view of a dietitian.
And I'm going to take the people's view. That vitamin D's for you, for me, for everyone. Vitamin D, for the people, with the people, Joe the people.
I may not be able to argue with you on that.
We'll find something to talk about.
I think we're going to start with opening statements. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Joe. This is my statement. A vote for me is a vote for vitamin D. Don't vote for her.
There's not going to be a vote at the end of this.
You said elect to take vitamin D.
It's a personal...
What's more personal than your vote? A vote for Joe is a vote for freedom.
What's more personal than your vote is what you choose to put in your body. Let's talk science of vitamin D.
Here we go. She's pulling out the science guns.
I actually posted a video on vitamin D a couple years ago while I was still a student. You can check it out. I'm going to link it to the description in this video.
How many views did it get?
Not very many. It's an old video, so the quality is not very good, but the content is still valid.
We'll see about that. Let's get into it.
Okay, so you may have noticed that there have been some articles popping up in places like Facebook or your newsfeed on other social media about whether or not vitamin D has a role to play in this fight against the current pandemic.
First off, let's talk about vitamin D in general. I bet a lot of people don't know that vitamin D can be found in plants and can get into your body through the sun. You have anything to say in response to that with your science?
You can get vitamin D into the body with exposure of your skin to the sun. However, it actually doesn't show up in very many plants, Joe.
Well, that's not my fault.
It really isn't your fault. However, it is a good thing to know. If you are eating a plant-based diet and you are not getting a lot of sun, you probably are not getting a lot of vitamin D in your body. So you may need to figure out some way to do that.
What's the bad thing about not getting enough vitamin D?
The bad thing about not getting enough vitamin D is that the calcium homeostasis in your body can be all screwed up. We need to have calcium in our bloodstream. Why do you think we need calcium in our bloodstream, Joe?
To keep our bones strong and keep our heart functioning right. To get the beep-bop, bebop going.
We need it for things like nerve and muscle conduction.
Calcium ion channels in the heart muscle.
But if the blood does not have enough calcium in it, we need vitamin D to fix that problem.
Because they're connected. Vitamin D connects to calcium, like your vote connects to my winning.
There's nothing that you're going to win here, I'm afraid.
Then why are we even debating?
To inform the public.
All right.
Actually, the other thing that vitamin D does do, especially in children, is it prevents things like rickets. There's also suggestions that vitamin D actually is beneficial for your immunity, which is why we are thinking about, can this be helpful in the fight against coronavirus?
So, you think that you have all the answers?
No, I really don't.
So you think that you have all the questions?
I have some questions.
Like what?
Can vitamin D actually make it less likely that we're going to get a bad case of the coronavirus? I think that's the question on everyone's mind. Here's the thing, we really don't know for sure. Prior to this whole virus thing, there were some studies done on whether or not vitamin D levels in your bloodstream prevented people from getting colds or made it less likely they were going to get colds, and they were kind of inconclusive. But it might give you a milder case of the virus. There have been limited studies that have suggested this. The virus is new, so there hasn't been time to do a lot of randomized clinical trials, which is sort of the gold standard for studies.
I'm going to lay some truth on you here. Something my opponent won't tell you is that vitamin D is not a cure-all for the virus.
I actually will tell you exactly that. Vitamin D is not a cure-all from the virus. It certainly won't prevent transmission. That has to be done with things like Social distancing, masking, and maybe hand washing.
Maybe hand washing. So you're against hand washing?
I'm not against hand washing, but it is also not a cure-all. It's an airborne virus. It's not just on surfaces.
So if you elect me to provide you with vitamin D, I'll make sure that there's a vitamin D pill in every home.
What is your source of vitamin D?
Fish oil, globular nebulizers.
Did you know that the vitamin mineral industry isn't very well regulated? So I don't know what Joe's source of vitamin D is, but I would check into my source of vitamin D and make sure it's one that you feel comfortable with.
So where do you get your vitamin D?
I actually take vitamin D drops, or I sometimes go out into the sun.
Speaking for the other side of this issue, let's talk about where one can get vitamin D if one doesn't have access to fancy rich people drops.
Well, vitamin D doesn't have to be expensive, and you actually may need to find ways to supplement, but I think it's a good point to think about where can we get it in our diets.
Foods that begin with D have vitamin D.
They do not. I can't even think of any foods that begin with D that have vitamin D.
Dopalipa maca jello?
Not a food. You can get some vitamin D in egg yolks, but one egg probably has less than 10% of your daily requirement for vitamin D, so it's not going to give you a lot.
Who makes up these numbers? And who ever gets enough vitamin D then?
Exactly.
And we've managed to survive this far.
Well, when we evolved, we were spending more time in the sun. So sun actually is the best way for our bodies to get vitamin D because they make it when our skin is exposed to the sun.
What's the consequences of not having enough vitamin D?
Didn't we just go over this?
What has vitamin D done for you lately? Are you better off now or 4 years ago? Ask yourself that question if you're going to vote for vitamin D.
So this may be a particularly bad time to be deficient in D. It is a nutrient of concern for most people and has been for a really long time.
That's why they fortify milk with it, right?
Well, actually they do, yeah.
All right. And cereal?
Some cereals, yes.
Yeah.
If you are eating a strictly whole food plant-based diet, hurrah for you, but you may actually be missing out on some of the fortified foods that are processed and have vitamin D added to them.
Or you can choose to go with the Joe plan and just soak up some rays.
As we're approaching winter, it becomes less likely that we're going to be doing a lot of ray soaking.
But even if you get enough vitamin D, it's not going to cure the virus.
No, it really isn't.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay, great.
Lorelei, the science lady.
Mm-hmm.
If vitamin D is so good, how come vitamin A, B, and C do better on their report cards?
Ooh, burn vitamin D? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I think my work here is done. Vote.
Okay. The only randomized clinical trial that I could find in recent months was a very small trial that was done on already hospitalized patients with coronavirus or COVID-19. They were given therapeutic doses of vitamin D, which means very high doses of D. And in fact, the group that got that vitamin D along with the standard treatment, which both groups got standard treatment, the group that got the vitamin D in addition fared better than the group that didn't. Not saying this was a perfect study. They didn't have vitamin D levels prior to either their illness or hospital admission, so you can't say anything about vitamin D status, but there is some promise in the idea that vitamin D as a therapeutic measure may help in coronavirus. The reasons why it seems to be working in coronavirus is that it actually reduces some of the inflammatory reaction that our immune systems provide, which is what's causing things like the pneumonia that people are getting from this. There are also past studies done on people who had acute lung injuries who were treated with vitamin D, and it was shown to be of some benefit. But here's the deal. You don't want to be using high dose or therapeutic levels of vitamin D on your own because there is a toxicity level of vitamin D. And if you take too much of it, that vitamin D is just going to keep pulling more calcium into the bloodstream, and you can get things like kidney stones as the body tries to get rid of calcium, or even calcification of organs. It's definitely not a case of some is good, more is better. You want to be staying around the recommended dietary allowance, the RDA, which is, by the way, 15 micrograms per day or 600 international units. You want to stay below the tolerable upper level, which is about 4,000 international units. So if you think you're depleted, you might need to go higher than the RDA, but you don't want to go up to therapeutic levels. In the hospital, they are doing that, but those patients are really heavily monitored.
This is definitely not Joe calling in
Sure.
to the debate show.
Okay.
I wonder if you could put it into like real life terms for people, like how much vitamin D is in something that people might eat.
Oh, that's actually a really good question. So if we look at our low-fat milk, there is, if you look at the bottom here, vitamin D, there are, I need my reading glasses, 2.5 micrograms in a serving, yeah?
Yes.
Which is about 10%, and they're going off of 25 micrograms being the RDA. It's really 15, but 25 is okay. So this is about 10% of what you need in a day, but you're probably not going to be drinking 10 glasses of milk in a day.
If I am a person's entire recommended daily allowance of vitamin D, going from the top down, how much of that vitamin D would that a glass of milk give me?
Here.
So it's cheek level. How much does an egg yolk have?
A little less than that.
So in Joe body terms, it's only top of ear.
Yeah.
What would something like waist level be at?
Oily fish actually tends to have a little bit more vitamin D in it.
That's my band name, Oily Fish. Sardines.
I don't know why we have sardines. Who eats sardines around here? You eat a whole thing of sardines, you get 70% of your daily value.
Right, what helps with eye health in terms of vitamins?
Reading glasses.
So that would get a waist level of your daily recommended
Yeah,
allowance.
if you ate this whole thing of sardines. But you probably shouldn't eat oily fish every single day because some fish can be contaminated with mercury, and if you're eating it really regularly, you can have toxic mercury levels build up in your body. Sad to say.
What are the dangers of too much vitamin D?
Calcification of organs.
Is it like water soluble? Can you just drink water and it will go out?
It's fat soluble, no.
Okay. Anything else we should know about vitamin D? And getting enough of it in your diet?
Oh, I know. You can get vitamin D from mushrooms that have been irradiated. But these are mushrooms that were like packed at the store and they don't have a producer label on it, so I have no idea whether these mushrooms were irradiated.
Alien mushrooms.
There is a little symbol that you can see on mushrooms that will say it has been irradiated. They do it because they're trying to prevent spoilage, but it actually causes them to produce vitamin D2, which our bodies can use.
Can we just irradiate all our foods and get vitamin D from them?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
But mushrooms is something that they do it to, and it produces vitamin D when they do it.
So closing statements, and then we'll have a vote.
My closing statement is that as we come to the close of summer and there is less sunshine available, we're going to need to figure out a way to get vitamin D. Yes, you can get some from your food, but chances are you're not going to be getting quite enough from your food, so you may need to supplement. Vitamin D may or may not be beneficial in the fight against coronavirus, but if you're taking the right amount, it can't hurt. If it might help, look into it.
Great. Once again, my opponent has completely stolen my concluding statement. So I will just end with this. A vote for Joe is a vote for freedom and sufficiency of vitamin D, as well as A, B, and C, because I throw in the whole alphabet for you, America.
We do need A, B, and C as well, but that just doesn't happen to be the subject of this video.
I also throw in the little known but super vitamin W. So a vote for Joe is a vote for vitamin W and self-sufficiency everywhere. Go America.
Votes casted in the comments will not be tabulated.
They will totally be tabulated. You should comment multiple times. Vote Joe.
Vote vitamin D!
Vote Joe. in favor of vitamin D.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope this has been somewhat educational.
Oh, Joe!
I will leave some links in the description for this video as well, both to the article I mentioned about the recent clinical trial and as well as a blog that I posted on another site a while ago. Take your vitamin D, folks. Take care.
I'm Joe America, and I'm average Joe, and I'm voting Joe.
Wow. Joe everywhere.